What's going on, everybody? You found Bottom Tier Collector, and I'm your host, The Bearded One. As always, thank you for liking, subscribing, commenting on my content. It's always much appreciated. So, in an effort to keep the channel rolling, keep content, I'm going to reach for some low-hanging fruit today. It's been slow. Fall time is usually really slow for me purchasing comic books. I've got a DCBS service pull list coming in the next month or two. I forget how long out the pre-orders are. So I'm still purchasing comics. I've got a Lobo appearance coming in the mail. But overall, I've really just kind of on hiatus with the wallet and comics right now, trying to gear up for the holidays and slow down the personal purchases. But that doesn't mean I can't still be involved in the hobby. There are plenty of ways for everybody to be in the hobby, and buying and collecting comics is only one facet of that. Reading comics is one of the best ways you can be involved in the hobby for sure. I think sometimes it's easy to forget that we can read books we already own. I know I tend to lose focus on that sometimes. Just enjoying what I already own. And I'm going to attempt to do that today. I'm going to talk about the top 5 favorite writers that I have read. My top 5 all-time favorite writers. Maybe this list is fluid. I don't know if the top, if the top 1 or 2 writers will ever be dethroned, beloved writers in my opinion. But I feel like this is going to be a fun list for you guys. For you newer collectors out there, I hope to expose you to some different writers. None of these writers are new. I don't know why I almost said that. And then for you people that know me in the community a little bit, you know my taste, or you people that know me in real life, maybe I can fool you with 1 or 2 of these picks. So first up, my number 5 all-time favorite writer is actually most known for his art. And I don't think people give him enough credit for his writing. And that is Todd McFarlane. And here is the first compendium to Spawn. Now, right off the bat, I want to say this is a very 90s book. And, it's about a guy that died. He was a mercenary for the government. He died, sold his soul to one day, with the hopes of one day being reunited with the love of his life. And really the first 10 issues are just about him kicking ass and taking names. They really are. But if you undress Spawn a little bit, if you love the 90s and you love, action sequences and you don't need a lot of character development, I don't think you're going to have a very hard time getting into Spawn if you don't know anything about Spawn. Very fast-paced and quick getting into Spawn at first. And maybe that was planned, maybe it wasn't. But we kind of hit a turning point. We get to Grant Morrison writing issue 9, first appearance of Angela, and then Dave Sim has a guest appearance. He even puts Cerebus in Spawn in issue 10, which I think it was a very creative yet sarcastic issue, poking fun at the big two. It was my first experience with Cerebus. And after issue 10, the story really starts to take root, and Todd really starts to flex his creative prowess, and he just moves all these puzzle pieces between issue 10 and 50, and I was kind of blown away. Once I started getting into the 30s, now he does sidetrack. There are rabbit trail issues, I guess. I don't want to say they're filler. A lot of his rabbit trail issues have a lot of depth, and there's a message there that he's trying to tell the audience. He wants, the audience to think about. And then you've also got where he's sharing writing duties with Alan Moore, has a couple issues. I think Neil Gaiman comes back several times. And that's really cool. I think that's awesome that legendary writers, which I don't know how legendary they were in 92, 91, when Spawn came out. I don't know how legendary they were considered back then, but they were definitely hot writers on the rise in the early 90s. And it's really cool to see different writers come in and put their 2 cents on Spawn. However, the bulk of the compendium, the bulk of the 50 issues is Todd. And I think if you're a horror fan, again, a horror fan or an action fan, you don't need a lot of character development. You don't need a lot of plot development, a lot of world building. You can get into Spawn real easy. But if you are a fan of more intelligent writing, Spawn might not appear like something for you at first, but I promise if you give it a chance, Spawn is definitely, at least these first 50 issues. I don't know about the rest of the series. I've heard Spawn kind of tapers off with the plot threads. Woo, party foul. With the plot threads after issue 50. But, at least get Compendium 1 or try to read the first 50 issues digitally. You won't be sorry. So next up we have a controversial writer, and I don't know if he's controversial in the sense of he's abrasive with the fans. He's definitely not. Is it Tom King or Tom Taylor? Whichever one's writing Superman, Son of Kal-El, that would be a writer I would classify as controversial, like abrasive with the fans. Not going to say any more on that, but this next writer maybe has some out there ideas, and that's cool, but I still appreciate him anyways, and that's Grant Morrison. I want to say I have been exposed to Grant Morrison prior to me buying the 1 Million Omnibus and reading it, but this was definitely my first real true experience with Grant Morrison and experiencing an entire event. I would say most of the story was written by him. Now, this was written at a time when DC had an event gimmick where every annual of every title fit into the event. That's what the event was. All the annuals. They didn't spill it over into the single issues, which I think is a nice gimmick. I think especially in today's time when we're dealing with events, as readers we get event fatigue, but in the industry I hear about writers sometimes being frustrated that they have to put a story on pause to service an event that's coming up in the company, and that tends to aggravate certain writers sometimes. And I think, back then you probably didn't have that problem as much. You could just dump everything into the annual to service the events and then keep on moving on with your single issues. I kind of wish they'd go back to that. It's, again, another very 90s story, and this ain't even the pinnacle of Grant Morrison. I think he's most known for Final Crisis in the late 2000s. Roughly around 2008, and then the early 2000s and late 90s JLA run was written by Grant Morrison. Those seem to be two of his most famous works. He was also involved with 52, not the new 52, 52 in the mid 2000s. An excellent event from what I've heard. I need to get that omnibus. There's Lobo's in it. Gotta read my Lobo. What else has he done? He did an excellent Batman and Robin series for the new 52, from what I've heard. And then here, more recently, he took on Green Lantern, let's say around 2018, 2019. And I want to say right before COVID, maybe during COVID. And it's kind of a love-hate series. I hear mixed reviews from Green Lantern fans, but overall, I hear that it's pretty solid writing. But here in the omnibus, man, I fell in love with this omnibus. The story with Sandman, not Sandman, the story with Starman. This is the original Starman. There's a moment with him, and is he on the cover? He might be on the back. Yeah. You probably can't see it. The newer Starman. There's a plot twist with that character, and that issue was the best issue in there. I think Grant Morrison wrote it. That issue really reminded me a lot of The Watchmen, and this is a really 90s kind of goofy, kind of over-exaggerated story, and then you got this little, this one annual in there that there's a lot of depth and brevity there. So that can show the different layers Grant Morrison has as a writer. I'm fairly sure he wrote that Starman annual. I had fun. I'm a fan of the 90s. I had fun with the 90s concepts. He's not an artist, obviously. But I thought my only knock on this event is that the start of every annual is very repetitive. Is that a fault of Grant Morrison or editorial? I'm not sure, but that is where I would knock this particular story. The annuals, members of the Justice League go to the future and they're entered into these games. And not each annual, not every annual, but certain annuals are dedicated to each of the members of the Justice League, and it just gets kind of monotonous, and that's where I would knock this event. Other than that, great story, and the plot twist I thought was one of the greatest plot twists in all comic books. I haven't read as much as some of you other guys out there, but I just thought when the plot twist happened, I was just like, whoa, that is crazy to think about. Like, how are the heroes going to get out of this plot twist? So yeah, that's DC 1 Million. That's Grant Morrison, my number 4 all-time favorite writer of all time. Check out his other works that I have listed. Next up at number 3, I think it's going to be on most. If you've been in comics for a decent amount of time, especially if you're a Vertigo fan, there's your hint. This writer is definitely on your list of favorite writers. I'm sure he's many people's number 1, and that is Neil Gaiman. I feel like this story transcends comic books. It transcends the medium. This story is on par with the greatest epics, in world history. The Odyssey, the Iliad, Beowulf, the Epic of King Gilgamesh. I feel like Sandman is up there. The Lord of the Rings, I feel like, is another great epic tale of human history. I feel like Sandman belongs in that category of, some of the greatest classic stories of all time. Especially this first volume. I haven't read volume 2 yet, but I'm sure it's good. There's even a show on Netflix. I'm reading mixed news. I'm reading that either Sandman's been canceled. Also reading that it's been renewed. I don't know. Either way, I do know Neil Gaiman has publicly voiced that he's prepared to keep making Sandman, even if Netflix drops the property. So I guess Sandman's still going on for the long time. I don't want to get into the overall plot. This is very, very deep. You can take Sandman at face value, and you can get a really cool fantasy epic out of it. But then there's subplots. There's so many layers, and you can really get to the root of it. The real root of what Neil Gaiman is writing about is what is story, what makes story. The creation of story. What are the elements of story itself? That's really what Neil Gaiman's trying to touch on here with Sandman. But you can also pull back, and again at face value, you get this fantastic fantasy epic about the story of Sandman, a member of a family called the Endless that technically don't even exist. The reason the Endless exist at all is because all of existence creates the Endless in their minds. So it's just a really cool concept. It touches on religion, possibly politics. There's tons of social commentary in this, but I don't want politics in my comics, people, stirred up. It's done in a very elegant way that gets you to think critically. Neil Gaiman's not trying to beat you over the head with a political message or a social message. There's no agenda here. It's just Neil Gaiman reaching into the far crevices of his mind and putting them on paper, and just exploring the idea of story and what it is. I encourage everybody, if you're a comic fan, you're not a comic fan, pick up at least the first omnibus, or again, read it digitally, or get it in trades, break it up into trade paperbacks, and it just belongs in everybody's library. I've said this before, I could see in 100, 200 years, when we're all dead and gone, Sandman is going to be taught in English literature classes. I really think it's that transcendent and that innovative of a story. And then Neil Gaiman's done other stuff, but again, most noted for Sandman. We're getting into the top two. Love these two writers to death. This was real easy to pick my top two. Next up, we got Garth Ennis, and I got 3 examples of Garth Ennis stuff. I just freaking love me some Garth Ennis. Preacher, read that, got it for a birthday present from a friend. One of the best birthday presents I've ever got. Preacher is my kind of stuff. It's absurd. It's crude. It's provocative. It just very Garth Ennis, and just a fantastic read. And I want to read the whole story. I want to see the show on AMC. I can't believe I haven't finished it yet. And yeah, just great stuff. Next up, we got The Demon. Garth Ennis wrote from issue, I think, 40 to the end, to issue 58. I think he had, I don't know if he wrote both issues, both annuals, but he did write annual number 2, the first appearance of Hitman. And these both are kind of in that same pocket of the DC universe. I call it my Lobo, Etrigan, Hitman pocket. Just very, very 90s, especially Demon. Demon probably won't be for everybody, especially for you guys that don't like a lot of action, a lot of nonsense. If you need a little more intelligent writing, you tend to stray towards indie books. Maybe back off of Demon, but Hitman here, you can undress Hitman. It's still written in the vein of the Demon. It's about a hitman for the mob. I think he was for the mob, or maybe he's a freelance hitman that just accepts bounties. I don't know. He's definitely a killer for hire, and he's Irish, and on the surface, Hitman is just a rated R action movie, but you can undress Hitman because Garth Ennis, elegant, I don't want to say elegantly, but he just puts these subtle layers of personality and depth and characterization of Tommy Monaghan, the Hitman, in some of his issues where it kind of catches you off guard, but it's not jarring. It just makes you appreciate and get to know Tommy a little better. And it's done in a way that I've never seen that style of writing that he has in Hitman anywhere else in comics. I've never seen a book handled the way Garth Ennis handled Hitman. And it's truly his baby. I wish Garth Ennis owned Hitman. He could pull it out of DC and continue on with Hitman. Well, he can't move on with Hitman, but I'm not going to spoil that. You just have to read the story for yourself. It went on for 60 issues, 60 or 70 issues, 2 annuals, I think, maybe 3. I don't know the whole series. I haven't finished it, but I'm getting there, and just fantastic read. Demon, again, it's just more of fun, goofy 90s stuff about a demon from hell doing hellish things in the city of Gotham. And Garth Ennis has also written The Boys. He's also written the Punisher Max series. I believe it was the Punisher Max series. And he's done some indie works. There's like a World War I ace fighter pilot type comic book he wrote for an indie publisher. So Garth Ennis has definitely been around, and I'm definitely familiar with more of his works. And then last up, you knew it was coming. You knew it was coming. You didn't even have to watch the rest of this video. You knew it was coming. Keith freaking Giffen. You knew it was coming. Lobo's daddy, the creator of Lobo, is my all-time favorite writer, and why shouldn't he be? He's the reason I came to comics at all. Now I kind of include Alan Grant in with Keith Giffen. But I'll have to say the difference for me, I think maybe I enjoy Lobo 2, Volume 2, more than anything else Lobo's ever been in. However, Keith Giffen wrote so much more of Lobo. He's written most of the key moments for Lobo. And I appreciate his Omega Men run that he created Lobo in. It's a really cool sci-fi series from 1983, before the Copper Age. I still consider it the tail end of the Bronze Age, before we get into Crisis on Infinite Earth. And I love his Legion series. I've read the first 20 issues of Legion. I need to get back on that. I need to get back on everything. I need to read more than I'm already reading. I love Justice League International. Justice League International is the sitcom of comic books. I don't know how else to describe it. Very funny, very goofy. It triggered a lot of fans in the 80s. A lot of people trashed on Justice League International, but I love that series. It is precious. As precious as looking at Big Barda and Mr. Miracle embracing each other. Just Lobo and Justice League International are my heart. They really are. And Keith Giffen had the biggest part to do with that. And then there was Legion. He also did Legion, not to be confused with Legion of Superheroes. There was Legion 89. And I think I already said that. I'm repeating myself. But yeah, I read the first 20 issues of that. Enjoyed it. Keith Giffen also did a really good Justice League 3001, I believe, series for the New 52. I hear it was really good. I heard it won an Eisner Award. So that's cool. And it even reunited with J.M.D. Mateus for that Justice League 3001. Keith Giffen's done Trencher. I see that's like a dollar bin book. I see Keith Giffen's. He has something to do with Rocket Raccoon. I can't remember what he did over at Marvel. And I feel like Keith Giffen slowed down, maybe not taking as many projects these days. He is older in age than most of the other writers I've mentioned here. But again, I haven't said a lot about Keith Giffen comparatively to the other writers I talked about today, but it really goes without saying. I just cannot say enough about Keith Giffen and what Lobo means to me. And I'd encourage you guys. This should be in your Lobo starter pack. If you're curious about Lobo, you need to buy Lobo Volume 1. It's got Lobo's Volume 1 in here. You've got Paramilitary Christmas Special in here. This needs to be in your starter. You got Lobo's Back, I believe, in here. That's another key book. Yeah, this ain't issue 1. But Lobo's Back is in here. This should be the Lobo starter pack. It really explains the character in this trade paperback. Well, that'll do me, guys. My top 5 to recap. Number 5 was Todd McFarlane. I love that the first 50 issues of Spawn. My number 4 was Grant Morrison. I love DC Omnibus. I collect 52 and I need to read it someday. I want to get to Final Crisis eventually. My number 3 was Neil Gaiman. I just cannot praise Sandman enough for what it means to comics. My number 2 was Garth Ennis, just the ever wacky, provocative, crude writer Garth Ennis is. And then Keith Giffen, the father of my favorite character. Just the guy that shaped a lot of my taste in comic books. That'll do me, guys. Who's your top 5? Do you like anybody on my list? Have you heard of everybody on my list? Do you hate some of the people on my list? I'd love to hear some feedback. To read some feedback would be more accurate to say. And until